Welcome to Sinister Heroes. I'm your host, Danny Iniquitous. Thank you for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, this is a channel about Dungeons and Dragons. We're trying to take a darker tone with everything we do here. So if you like edgier kind of content, definitely hit that like and subscribe button. A big thank you to our Patreon supporters. We love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, the link is in the description, as well as a link to our good friends at Critical Failures, where we're part of a live stream game. Check us out Wednesday nights, about 9:30 Eastern Time. With all that out of the way, we're going to jump into this week's video where we're going to talk about the Scout Rogue. The Scout Rogue comes to us from Xanathar's Guide to Everything. So, in regards to that Rogue, it's not that bad of a subclass, but just keep in mind, with the way that the Rogue is built, where your damage comes from sneak attack, that's really the formula for your damage. If you need to up that damage, you need to find a way to get some sort of cantrip like Green Flame Blade or Booming Blade. A lot of people tend to grab Booming Blade because with cunning action, you can hit and then disengage and run away. So if they do chase after you, they take additional damage. That's a little hard to do because you have to base it around sneak attack and having other party members around that enemy, and they're not exactly going to be looking to taking that bonus action, or a lot of them don't have the availability to do that. So that's kind of where that damage kind of scales on paper better than it does in real practical life. But usually either one of those will up your damage to a point where it's kind of grandeur than most. But outside of that, there's really very few ways to up your damage as a rogue. But if you hit on that attack, it does plenty of damage to suffice for your level and where you are, and it doesn't actually cost a resource. So keep that in mind when looking at some abilities, especially some subclasses, considering a lot of the times when you have a stronger base, your subclasses don't add additional power because it's kind of a balancing act where they add you something else to kind of make your character more unique or give you a couple of cool tricks or something like that. The Scout Rogue is a interesting kind of idea, because normally when I think of scout, I think of somebody like in the forest or something, like miles ahead of the group, kind of like a ranger. But although some of those things do kind of fit in really well with what a scout is, your thought process with the Scout Rogue is that you're a survivalist. Like you're very good at spotting danger and doing whatever you can to avoid it, and your abilities will tend to reflect that. I like the idea of being a really intelligent and tactical rogue. I think that's a very important part of all the rogues kits, to being a smart combatant. And I don't think this kind of deviates from that at all. I think it actually fits in kind of well, and as we go through the abilities, you kind of see how that kind of puts together. So you get two abilities when you select this subclass at 3rd level. The first being Skirmisher. Starting at 3rd level, you are difficult to pin down during a fight. You can move up to half your speed as a reaction when an enemy ends its turn within 5 feet of you. This movement doesn't provoke opportunity attacks. Here's the kit, right? You do have the rogue ability to reduce your damage by half when you get hit as a reaction. I forget what it's called. It escapes me at the moment. So when you do finally get that ability and you have this ability, you do have to make a choice. The benefit is, if you didn't need to use that, you can use your reaction to move up to half your speed. Depending on where you are in initiative order, that might be really, really important to you. Depending again on how your DMs do enemy movements. Some of them roll initiative for each type of monster. Say if there's like a group of zombies and a group of skeletons and like an ooze or whatever, they'll roll for each one and they'll each go at their different times, or they'll kind of move them all kind of at the same time. It all really depends on your DM style. I don't think it makes too much of a difference ultimately, but if you happen to be the next one after that enemy that kind of went into your space, or that space next to you, using that reaction might be more beneficial to you. You can move up to half your movement speed, so you can back up like 3 squares because it ends up being 15 feet, which means on the next turn you can make a ranged attack and back up ultimately being 45 feet away. It kind of depends on the picture, the stage of which you are in that combat, or where you need to go. Maybe you're surrounded by multiple people, and that other character is going to be going next, and they're an enemy. It might be more beneficial to lead yourself away in case there are other people there that might be able to take opportunity attacks. Maybe you have a friend with Sentinel, or maybe you're in a situation where backing out of there kind of closes a gap between you and someone else, and making that work out for your benefit. Again, being tactical, it's really, really important with this kind of a subclass, because you do need to be, I think you do need to be intelligent with your choices. The other ability you get is called Survivalist. When you choose this archetype at 3rd level, you gain proficiency in nature and survival skills if you don't already have it. Your proficiency bonus is doubled for any ability check you make to use either of these proficiencies. This kind of leans towards more that ranger aspect of being out in the wilderness or in nature or in a cave or in dungeons or something like that, where you need to make those checks to track someone, to understand if something is poisonous, to verify what the normal or the emotional understanding of an animal you encounter, whatever it is. These kind of fit into that kind of category. Again, this is more DM dependent on how they build the adventuring side of the world, but it does give you that opportunity to be very ranger-esque. At 9th level, you gain superior mobility. Your walking speed increases by 10 feet. If you have a climbing speed or swimming speed, this increase applies to that speed as well. Understand this also works with Skirmisher, so as opposed to going 15 feet, you can now move 20 feet, which is a bigger difference, which makes Skirmisher give you a little bit more opportunity to be very elusive in combat. Again, there's not any damage increases at this point, and this is because most of the damage as a rogue comes from your sneak attack. So just keep that in mind as to why you haven't gotten additional things for your bonuses to damages or anything like that. At 13th level, you gain Ambush Master. You excel at leading ambushes and acting first in a fight. You have advantage on initiative rolls. In addition, the first creature you hit during the first round of combat becomes easier for you and your others to strike. Attack rolls against that target have advantage until the start of your next turn. This is key for setting up your party. Okay? Understand, you do need to hit. You do need to hit. That's the issue here. You need to land that attack. Setting yourself up so you have certain advantages to make that attack. If you're going through a dungeon, doing it stealthily so you can be hidden and maybe giving yourself advantage on that attack would make a huge difference. But as difficult of an ability for this to hit, advantage on everyone attacking one target can destroy a big monster in like a turn. At 13th level, you'll definitely have people that have some sort of attack roll that can do a big hit or do a large amount of damage. If you have barbarians that are using Great Weapon Master, this is a great way to compensate for that, because you'll have advantage on that roll, so that -5 will hit pretty hard. It won't hit pretty hard. It'll be barely noticeable because of advantage, but you do get that without giving your barbarian the need to have advantage on attacks against them. You can have a paladin that can smite and crit. You have a warlock. Maybe you have a Pact of the Blade warlock that has smite. Like, they have their own smite. That's pretty impressive. Other rangers, wizards, anything that has an attack roll has a great opportunity to blow something up, and something that's big. And it relies on you being this master of ambush, this tactical genius, this person who's available to see the enemy coming and set up that one attack. It is fantastic. And it's probably most campaigns this will be the last ability you get, but it can set up fantastic things. It's always on. It's a current passive. If you're fighting just a big bad, you will take down most of their HP as a group, landing this on one roll, because you can unload. Everyone can go Nova this one turn, and it will just set up perfectly for the rest of it. You can save on resources. You don't have to worry about compensating for long durations of fighting. That's kind of where like this ability comes in. And then the final ability that the scout rogue gets is called sudden strike. Starting at 17th level, you can strike with deadly speed. If you take the attack action on your turn, you can make one additional attack as a bonus action. This attack can benefit from your sneak attack even if you've already used it this turn, but you can't use your sneak attack against the same target more than once in a turn. So this is more so if you kill a target, you can go and do another sneak attack against a different target. That's how this really works. Because if you're going to make that extra attack, that bonus action is going to eliminate your availability to use your cunning action. So you can't disengage. So you really want to use this, drop someone and move someone else and hit them and get that sneak attack. That's kind of how this works. But you have to be smart enough and tactical enough to know what opportunities you have to land those sneak attacks. Now, they can be ranged. You can use a bow or whatever it is to make that attack. To land that hit and then hit someone else is a better use of this if you're not melee. I tend to like being a melee rogue, so for me it's always that get up close kind of a deal. Even though it's the craziest and probably the dumbest thing you can do, as a ranged rogue will always perform better because you can survive better, you have better opportunities to hide, you can use that bonus action, that cunning action to use the actual hide skill and try and evade everyone and be an unseen attacker and give yourself advantage. You could do a bunch of stuff like that. And with this, a ranged rogue does make a huge difference because you can hit two people and drop that extra sneak attack, which is a pretty huge amount of damage per round. And this also kind of fits into that idea of being very ranger-like. Like this is kind of like the ranger, what you kind of expect to be like, you know, in the trees with a bow and arrow, drop two people right away. That's kind of what this feels like, and it really gives you that idea of like that bird's eye view of combat, that advantage of knowing what's coming and being able to see it set up. With the scout rogue, if you want to be that kind of evil creature that lives in the swamp or the boggy areas, which I really got to stop making characters that come from, it works really well. This is really that like I'm estranged from society kind of a rogue. It works really well for characters in also military groups, soldiers, things like that, because this is kind of that feel. If you have a group that's heavy with druids and rangers and barbarians, and maybe you want to kind of fit in with the party, this makes the most sense because it's a very survivalistic kind of entity. It does give you survival and nature, which is something that's really big on exploration. So if you want to be more impactful in those kinds of formats, it's a great way to pick up some skills without having to forcibly pick a background or something that you didn't really initially want. I like rogues overall. I think they're very exciting to play. I think character-wise, you build very likable characters. Like that cool character is usually always a rogue for me. But that is kind of based on how you want to build them. This isn't a super popular rogue subclass. I think right now Phantom is just my favorite. Again, it's the Phantom Rogue, so obviously it's got a lot of themes that I like. I think you see a lot of soul knives. You see, what is that other one that I can't seem to remember at the moment? But you do see a bunch of them. Arcane Trickster, that's what it is. You see a lot of them pretty regularly, but and they kind of tend to take the majority of rogues that you see. But understand that your effectiveness as a rogue comes from your base subclass. So don't worry too much if your base class, not the subclass. Don't worry too much if your rogue isn't doing like insane things the entire time, because your base class is where your actual damage and efficacies really come from, because it's a very strong base class. So that balances out because they're very great at adventuring. They can do sustained damage. They have a lot of cool themes behind it and personality just with the character. So a lot of that gets balanced out between role-playing, adventuring, and combat. That being said, we're going to bring this video to a close. If you've played the Scout Rogue, definitely let us know in the comments. If you've made it this far in the video, definitely give us a like and subscribe if you haven't already. And a big thank you to our good friends who are supporting us at Patreon. We love you guys. Thank you so much for what you do. And a big thank you to our good friends at Critical Failures, where we're part of a live stream game. Check us out. The link to both of those is in the description. And thank you for giving a Spooky Kid a chance.